Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insight of leaders across industry. Our three guests is Christopher Swing, a seasoned executive and board director with experience spanning logistics, care, finance, private equity, and manufacturing. He's also the host of the Alchemy podcast, Faithful, where leadership meets strategy and insight. It's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show, Christopher.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Christopher, with such a diverse career, what key leadership principles have guided you through challenging time?
The biggest thing that we stay focused on is stay connected to our people and have integrity. I mean,
Hmm.
I think that's people want to do business with people that they know and trust, and people want to work for people that they know and trust.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you so much. I think trust just speaks volume for what you said. That during hard time, what is key is the fact that you stay connected and the fact that the integrity is being kept. Because people will always remember the fact that when things went wrong, you always have them in mind and you do business in a way to show that you have them completely in mind. It's really amazing, and thank you for sharing. So can you share a pivotal moment where you transform a business process or strategy that led to a significant growth?
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to learn to get out of your own way and to get out of the organization's way. And I think that's a lot of times what I've found is that we centralize a lot of decision making at the top of organizations. And there's a lot of people throughout the organization that have great ideas. They're just never asked for them. And so I think helping to really focus down into the organization and asking people, what are the things that they would like to see done differently,
Mm,
usually has enabled us to expand. The other thing is that we are doing a better job today, I think, than we've ever done with really focusing on having a subject matter expert. So that's if you're going to start a new process or you're going to start a new product, or even if you just have a particular challenging part of your business, someone ultimately needs to be responsible for that particular
mm.
aspect and then let them own it and let them run it.
Yeah, amazing. This is really lovely. The first point you mentioned, feedback, the fact that you ask for opinions to see what could be done better, and also having more like an expert on the subject matters, owing to the fact that a particular problem not being delegated to a particular person is a problem not being solved, not even being worked on or solved at all. And yeah, it's really amazing. I thank you for sharing. Also, how do you approach evaluating investment opportunity, and what advice will you give to aspiring private equity investors?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things that we look at when we're evaluating investments. First of all, depending upon your amount of due diligence, you have to determine what size that investment has to be in order for it to make sense. So let's just say that through a normal process, and I'm just throwing out round numbers here, so there's no connection to anything that we're doing. But let's just say for an investment that we're going to acquire, let's say that we're going to spend $1 million in due diligence. Well, if you're gonna do that, you don't wanna buy a business that's worth $1 million because half of your investment is gonna be in due diligence, right? So you're not gonna wanna write a check for $2 million if you're gonna spend $1 million in due diligence. And I think that's part of the piece that people have to think through when they're evaluating investments. Now, when it comes to me personally, when I'm looking at different investments, the things that I like to think about are what are my goals? Like, what's the cash flow needs that I have over the next 5 to 10 years? What am I looking for? Am I looking for some growth? Am I looking for cash flow in order to try to replace income? Am I looking for, a home run, VC type investment? And I think if you go through your portfolio and you decide, how you're allocating your investment portfolio to these different areas, and what your intention is with the funds in which you're investing, then it makes it so much easier to decide where to put those funds. It may not help you to say, okay, I need to call this person because they have this perfect fund related to what my investment thesis is. but it will help you to start to narrow down what doesn't fit within that investment thesis. And so let's say that you look at 10 different funds that you're potentially going to invest in, or 10 different assets that you're going to potentially invest in. Um, Having a vision of what you're going to try to accomplish with that investment will help you to ask much better questions when you get into those communications with those folks. And so, and then, like for me, I like to invest in things that I have experience in, which is
Yeah.
it's pretty broad. I've had the benefit of being in a lot more industries than most people. So the core of my investments are either in insurance or some sort of a financial modality, whether that be a bank or some other lending type institution or entity, um, healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, and especially like when they have a vision as far as, yes, I like the asset. We're buying this particular brand of product, but we're really buying the brand of product because they're not doing a great job on the manufacturing
Mm,
side, or they don't have a consistent product, but the product is really good. And so if somebody could true up, how it's manufactured, it would be so much better and would probably grow. And so understanding what the vision is of the team that runs that asset or intends to acquire and run that asset goes a long ways to figuring out, like, is this something that I believe that these people have the expertise in? Do they have succession planning in case, the fund manager or the asset manager would get run over by a bus? And do I think that I'll get my money back? And then do I actually think I'll hit the returns? And what's their, what does their history look like? What have been
mm.
their success with execution? I don't wanna invest in a private equity fund if that person has never built and sold a business, and especially if they've never built and sold to private equity, because what most people don't understand is, especially in the lower to middle market private equity, those transactions after that first private equity sale are usually to another private equity business. And so if they've never experienced selling something to private equity, the ability for them to exit at the multiples that they're hoping to get from the investment once they've actually improved the value of it, will be much harder if they've never had a transaction with private equity.
Wow, that was that was really a masterclass. Having to kind of, I think your mentorship is very, very robust. Looking at these particular things, before you actually get to kind of invest. Wow, amazing. Having to kind of do your due diligence. If the cost of due diligence is way, way more than even the cost of running, getting the particular stuff in hand, and also the vision. Oh, that was really amazing. What's your visions in 5 to 10 years to be able to ascertain whether it's something you love to go into? And also, if you didn't have experience, you won't go into it, which is, yeah, that's really amazing. The fact that it's easier to be run over when you don't have experience about a particular line of business while getting in compared to when you have the whole of lot of experience in respect of that and being able to kind of weigh the business in terms of the owners, the histories and know what and what, whether it's something you could actually trust owing to their track record. And yeah, that was really amazing. And thank you so much for sharing. So from your experience in logistics and healthcare, what are the most common operational mistakes our company make, and how can they be avoided?
I think you can tell a lot about a company based upon their headquarters. So
Mm,
in the logistics business and in the healthcare business, none of your customers will spend any time in your headquarters. So if you walk in and you see this illustrious place that's like really robust and very expensive and very well done, that would indicate that they're into very expensive things because they're not doing it for their customers because there's no customers that are going to show up, right? I don't care if you're a logistics business like a UPS or a FedEx or some niche provider of some services somewhere in the middle, or if you're in the services of supporting physicians or hospitals or surgery centers, none of those customers will walk into your doors. And so if I walk in and it's nicer than my office inside of their office, then it starts to make me wonder, okay, so are they raising money so they can have a really nice office, or are they raising money so that way they can go build an organization that will be really effective? And so I think there's a lot that you can tell about their office and how it's laid out and kind of what their vision is for their office. I think that so often organizations will use money in ways that aren't helping their customers. And when you do that, um, it really just doesn't end very well usually. And so just understanding, like, as they think about capital investments in the future, or they think about, how they plan to grow their business, first of all, does the logic follow? Do you think that they could actually execute on what they do, or they say they want to do, if in fact they could just go out there and hit the streets and do it well? But then secondarily, it's like, do the non-verbal cues that you pick up from their office, from talking to their staff members, from talking to, any employee, everyday employees, how do people perceive them within their organization?
Mm,
And do they really understand the struggles that happen out in the field?
mm,
And I'm not saying, like, that they have to be in the field all the time. That's not what I'm saying at all, because if they're running around, never endingly, they're probably not fixing the core functional issues of the organization. But do they know what's going on? Have they had conversations with their own staff to know the struggles that they're dealing with every day, and are they addressing them? Or do they have a plan to address them? Sometimes the employees may perceive that their employer is a bad employer. That doesn't necessarily make them a bad employer. It just means that there's a disconnect between
yeah.
what they're doing and what the people are hearing that they're doing. And that
Mm,
just may be a communication gap, and we all have those. Anybody that has a large organization, I have staff in 23 or 24 states today. And so if you go to one of my random employees in the company that doesn't regularly reach out to me, or vice versa, have extensive direct conversations, they may think that we're not hearing what they're saying. Um, and that may or may not be true. It may be true because they're not telling us that they have a concern. And so when you go out and ask the question, they may suddenly have a concern. Or it just may be that the implementation of a solution to their problem is being implemented, but they haven't seen it yet. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that everything you hear you immediately run with. It just means that you collect data. Warren Buffett always said that he went to the competitors of the company that he wanted to acquire, and he always asked them, "Hey, I can't acquire if I couldn't acquire you, who else in this industry should I acquire?" And then conversely, he would ask, "Okay, if I can't acquire you, who else in this industry should I never acquire?" And those 2 questions will give you a list of the people that you should consider, and in their perspective, of a group of people you should never consider. And that's a wise perspective, because though the peers, even some of my, competitors, I had a call the other day that I couldn't fulfill their needs. Like, the customer wanted something that I'm not good at. And I said, "Look, this company, that I know that competes with me in this space is really good at that. You should call them." Now, if I didn't think that they took care of their customers, I would never refer a
yeah.
customer to them. It doesn't mean that if a core customer that I couldn't meet their needs would call, I would never refer them to our competition, right? But I couldn't do what they wanted me to do. And so what I hope is that they say, "Oh, well, this guy's resourceful, and when they need something that
Mm,
I can actually provide, they come back and pay me back by helping
yeah.
them solve their problem," right? So I think that's kind of my vision of that. I don't know, if I answered your question exactly what you were
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
for, but
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it's really amazing, especially when you just make reference of, yeah, when it comes to logistic, check their headquarters to see what is on there, especially the fact that our customer doesn't have directly to come to the offices, get to know what they are doing there and get to see more like, do they know what is happening in the field? What is that, in terms of communication? Do they know what, the communicate, what is going on in the field so that they will able to kind of improve on everything that they're working on? Yeah, it's really amazing and robust. And the fact that you've been able to ask this particular question, especially when you just make reference of the investors, it's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So what role has mentorship played in your career, and how can leaders best support the development of their team?
So mentorship has meant everything to me. If you look
Mm,
back, you know, from where I came from, I came from nothing. My family isn't uber successful operators of multi-billion-dollar businesses. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to any Ivy League school. I went to a regional state school. Um, I started my first job. I didn't feel like I really knew even what I went to school for. So I came into an accounting program that was my degree, where I was immediately charged with running the accounting department for a multi-million dollar business with significant EBITDA, and I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't even know where
mm,
to start. School teaches you how to learn. They teach you some basic fundamentals, like in accounting, how to do accounting, but they don't connect those dots in, okay, well, here's what accountants do, and here's how you do accounting. Those are two totally different things. And so I came into a business that hadn't had its uh, checkbook reconciled in years. Like they just kept making adjustments. If the balances didn't match, they just made an adjustment.
mm.
And uh, for anyone who's reconciled an account like that, that is a ton of effort. So we had to go back like 3 or 4 years in order to find a base year where it had been reconciled, and then we had to pull out all these adjusting entries that had been made over time in order to get the books to reconcile so we could actually validate that the balance sheet was as it was supposed to, and it was not materially different.
Yeah,
But the problem is you get to the end of the month for accountants, us nerdy type people, and if you're off a few cents even, that tells you that there's something going on, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, significantly wrong, but it does mean that something is wrong. And so the only way you can figure out if it's significant or not is to figure out what is actually wrong. And, I don't wanna turn this into a accounting lesson, but
yeah,
anyways, the mentorship was, "Hey, here's what's important. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're focused on, but you gotta see the forest through the trees, and so get your balances figured out, and then you've gotta figure out what your strategy is. Like, how are you gonna support this organization with improvement from what they've experienced in the past, which will give you credibility within that organization, right?" And that's true of no matter what role you play. If you're a manufacturing supervisor, or if you're a line operator, or even just even like a press takeaway is what we used to call them, which are like feeders for a particular manufacturing line. No matter what your job is, if you can prove that you're interested in what they're doing to the point where you do it better than other people, people will start to notice. And when they start
yeah,
to notice that, they will invest in you. Some of those investments won't turn into anything, and some of those investments will be huge. And I think that's where people get confused, is that they think that um it's a random lottery, or that the really smart people get the best jobs or have the best roles. And that's not true in my experience. My experience has been that the people who show commitment, the people who understand our mission, and the people who push forward to make a difference are the ones we invest in the
yeah,
most. And that may not be the fairest way to do it, but I mean, let's be honest, everybody's busy. And when it really push comes to shove, do you want somebody who emulates your culture, what you desire your culture to be, or do you want someone who's really smart and doesn't do anything? And,
Ah,
I can tell you where my focus is it's like, if you wanna make a difference, like I wanna make a difference with this company, then I'm all in for you. If you wanna just be smart and spout off, like, things that you think would make us a better company, but you actually don't do anything to help us move in that direction, I'm probably not gonna invest a ton of time because as I'm sure you know, the doers are the ones that make a difference
yeah,
in the business. It's not the people who sit around and talk about it. The reason that I'm successful is not because I was the best BS artist. That's not the case. I'm the one that's willing to say, "Okay, we've talked about this for long enough. Let's try something.
that's right.
Maybe it's wrong." Right? Like the other day I was on my way to a meeting and I was making really good time because I was running late, but I missed my turn. So congratulations, I was making really good time in the wrong direction. That doesn't help you get to a destination.
Yeah,
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying work so hard that you're not paying attention to where you're going. But I am saying that if you've got to choose between two people, one of which is out there actually trying to make a difference, and the other one that just wants to sit behind a desk and talk about it, go after that person who's out there making a difference and invest in them. And you'll see just a tenfold or maybe even a hundredfold improvement in what the organization is doing. And so, I go back in my career. Along the way, I had this guy that recognized some qualities in me right out of school that he really liked, and he invested in me. And he was the founder of the first organization. I went into a GM training program, and I ended up. They ended up selling the business while I was in it, so I didn't become
mm,
the GM of that company. But I used that as a way to work for another business. And I didn't have a ton of experience in what they were looking for, but they saw someone who was willing to try and to go out
mm,
there and work hard. And so they invested in me. And the plant manager of that facility, when my boss's job became available, really encouraged my boss's boss to hire me. And the guy's like, look, this is too big of a role for him. We can't let this happen. And the plant manager's like, "No, listen, like, the person that role is here to support me, and I'm telling you,
mm,
this guy is the guy that can do that. You need to invest in him." And so he came to me that day. I hadn't even applied for the job, and he was
ooh,
arguing that I should get it for a job I hadn't applied for. And so then that afternoon, he came to me, he's like, we have dinner plans for tonight." I was like, "Okay, where are we going?" He's like, "We're going to this steak place." Fine. He's like, "I'm gonna teach you how to interview for this job that you didn't apply for." I'm like, "But I didn't apply for that job. Why do you need to teach me how to interview for it?" He's like, "Because I basically told them you are applying for that job, and I'm gonna teach you how to answer their questions so that way you'll get it."
mm,
I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." So I didn't want the job. Really, to be honest, like, I like the idea of it because who doesn't wanna get promoted, right? But I wasn't that great at what I was doing yet. I mean, I was doing okay. I had a good support function team that helped us to be good at it, but I followed in what his request was, and I said, "Look, I trust this guy. He's had my best interest to this point. He's really helped
mm,
me to develop as a human, and if he says that he believes that I can do this, then I need to apply for it." So at 26 years old, I became the controller for a $120 million business. And 18 months later, I became the ops controller, uh, investing $95 million a year in
ooh,
capital for a $1.5
wow,
billion business. And so those are the types of things that, I'm a farm boy from the middle of nowhere. My town that I grew up in was 850 people. I mean, we had to drive 30 minutes to get to a hospital. Like, I'm in the middle of nowhere, literally. And they turned me into a business guy over the years, and it's all because somebody was willing to invest in me in all those steps. Now, you can be a little bit likable as an employee. I think that goes a long way for people who want to
yeah,
invest in you. If you're a jerk, I don't think anybody wants to invest in a jerk. Um, but I don't think you have to be the smartest person in the room to get that attention. And I think part of it is, taking the time to make sure that you're meeting the needs of your
Mm.
constituents or your internal customers, as well as your external customers, in whatever role you're in. And I think that that goes a long ways towards earning some of those opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise expect.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Which that's really amazing. You speak volumes to taking actions, doing the work that need to be done, other than just sometimes talking about the problem is not doing it's talking about the problem is not doing the work. And seeing the problem is not doing the work. You just have to take actions and the fact that mentorship really helped you greatly, being able to kind of see forest from out of the trees and everything. It's really amazing. I thank you so much for sharing. So how has your faith and personal values influenced your leadership style and business decision?
So that's a great question. And I think it's important for us to have personal values, right? And I think that goes a long ways towards how we behave around other people. And I'll tell you that even though I'm a Christian, I'm not perfect, just like none of us are. Um, but I try to use those same principles of integrity and treating people how I would want to be treated if I was in their shoes as the way to approach it. I don't have underhanded meetings. I came from a big business. When you're in $1.5 billion business or more, there's a lot of meetings about how are we going to deal with this meeting that's coming up. And a lot of times the meeting planning doesn't end up being how it's executed in the real meeting. There's just a lot of political baloney that happens in those organizations. And I've just said, that isn't for me. Like, I'm sure that there are people that love those environments, and love to be politicians, and they love to try to, figure out how to get things done the way that they want to, even when it's not a very popular option. And we need those people because those people impact organizations that we love and we appreciate, whether that be like a Coca-Cola or an Apple. I mean, think about just the sheer volumes of people inside of those organizations on different teams and trying to get, you know, this next new amazing thing to be invested on by, a Tim Cook or from Coca-Cola or whomever. Um, a and so my focus is I'm the same person that I am outside of the business as I am inside the business. That doesn't mean that, um, like my focus is around integrity. My focus is around transparency,
Mm.
but that doesn't mean that I tell people that don't need the information that they don't need.
Yeah,
And so I don't use that as a way to share my burden that I get paid to bear with my staff. And so how do you flush that? And I think people look at that differently, right? For instance, if we're in a severe cash crunch, I don't go to the guy that's on the line that's really struggling to pay his bills and be like, "Man, we're like on the verge of, financial collapse." That doesn't help anyone.
yeah,
Um, that doesn't mean that if they ask me how we're doing, that I immediately say, "Things are great, couldn't be better." I just can't imagine the organization being in a different place. That's not integrity. That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't mean that you tell them the extent of the problems that you have. It just means that you can't mislead them into believing that something is better than it is. And so, like when organizations that I run struggle and somebody asks me, "Well, how are things going?" I'm like, "Well, here's the things that are going really well, and obviously we
yeah,
all always have some other struggles, and they're not small enough to ignore them. And but that's what you guys pay me to do is I'm here to
yeah,
make sure that we continue to build our revenue base so that way we make enough money to support all of you and your families, and that's really important to me." And so I think that's really how it plays out. I do think that there are people who, abuse faith with inside of organizations, and I think there are people um, who act or suggest that they're Christian, and you can't tell it when they're at work. And
Mm.
I think that, they're doing a disservice to themselves and to their organization.
Yeah, so true, so true. Amazing. Staying true to your authentic self. Why? Yeah, your values being the guiding now rules all through it and in and out and knowing when to share and knowing when to fold. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Cherry. So what trend or challenges do you see shaping the future of manufacturing and healthcare industries?
So, yeah, I think that's interesting. I think from a manufacturing perspective, what we're gonna see is continued growth in automation. I think that we're gonna see humanoid robots that are going to replace, some of our low-skilled labor work, and I think you're going to see AI that's gonna have some impact on some of the high logic or high decision process work. Um, I think that neither one of those groups will eliminate staffing with inside of manufacturing. I just think it will improve the manufacturing in general. Um, I think that, the idea of being able to have a robot pick up a part and immediately measure almost every measurement on that particular part to determine if it's in specs is something that we can't even understand because we can look at it and be like, "Oh, yeah, that looks great," and then it goes to quality, and 2 hours later, they're like, "Shut the line down, this thing doesn't
Yeah.
fit," you know? And so I think there are a lot of change coming to manufacturing, um, but I don't think it's all bad, and I think that people who continue to invest in themselves and continue to invest in how to operate tools will continue to be extremely necessary within those organizations. And um, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity as we think forward. And I think um, you know, I think what we'll see, and I think we've already seen a lot of it as you think about the exodus of a lot of manufacturing from the US. I think that we'll see more manufacturing done where the critical resources that are needed in that manufacturing are found. And so
Mm.
like what I would say to that is, you know, if you don't have stockpiles of lithium, right, you're probably not going to be the world's uh manufacturing hub for batteries.
Yeah.
Nothing logical, nothing comes from moving stuff all around the world to make this stuff in many, many different places when you could actually move your manufacturing likely close to where those resources are coming from
Yeah.
and cut a lot of cost out of the structure. Um, I think that what will be really interesting is just the continued collection of data in manufacturing lines. So, like, when I was in manufacturing, we would have sensors. You might have a sensor every 10 feet or something, but you don't have just never ending continuous collection of data. But think about how Tesla has built its value. The reason that Tesla is so valuable is because it has like 6 or 8 cameras that have now traveled 9 billion miles on
Oh,
Earth. And so not only does it have a camera that's collecting what it sees, for 9 billion miles, but it has, like, 6 or 8 surrounding the car, and so it's using all of that data, and it's saying, "How do we produce a car that can drive itself?" Well, if you think
mm,
about that, you're going to see similar things happen in manufacturing, right? We used to have all these data points where we would collect data like, are we getting the correct number of units that are hitting this particular data point comparative to what hit ten feet upstream? And if the answer is no, then we got a problem somewhere in this 10 feet,
yeah.
right? Well, if you have continuous visual monitoring of the entire line, like, you can react to things much, much faster. And then think of that humanoid robot that can pick up that part that camera can measure microns. And so instead of waiting for it to get off the line and then somebody from quality control comes and grabs it and goes and checks the specs on the part versus what it's manufacturing, you've got a computer that's evaluating almost every part that's coming down the stream. And yeah, it might be, oriented wrong, and so it may not get all of the measurements, but if it says, "Hey, I don't see any specs that are out of spec," like all the measurements meet what our manufacturing specs say or are within tolerances, then you just let it keep going and you hope
Yeah.
that if there is a problem, the next part is wrong also, or the next camera picks up a measurement that doesn't fit.
Yeah. Amazing.
But
Amazing.
but it's crazy. It's gonna be wild
Yeah.
to see what it looks like long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So what advice would you give to young professional aiming to become effective and visionary leaders?
I would say do your job really, really well,
Mm,
not get caught up in the minutia of the political stunts that go on in offices. And I know that everybody's really focused on work from home right now. And
yeah.
and and I even see, YouTube shorts about, well, if they pay me twice as much, I still wouldn't go to an office as what I would, do a work from home job. Here's my concern for you. The reason that I've been successful is because of my relationships.
Yeah.
It's not just the work. And if you don't have an office to go to, how do you build those relationships? And the other thing is don't pick one person and say, I'm going to be really nice to this person. I don't care about anybody else. You don't know who's the next
Yeah.
important person in that organization. And so be really good at what you do and be someone that people want to be around, you
Yeah.
know? Sometimes it's hard to deliver bad news, but do it in a way that people don't go, "Man, that guy is a jerk." Just be transparent about it and say, "Help me to understand how to deal with this problem." Or help me to understand, what you think we should do about the fact that we're missing our budget. Instead of just being like, "We've got to stop doing this, this, and this," use some of their knowledge and experience. Those people will turn around and invest in you when you can help them. So, like, for instance, every company runs into times where they have budget shortfalls. And so when we would have a budget shortfall, we would get together as a group and say, okay, here's how much our shortfall is. Do we have any places that we can cut some costs in the short term that won't impact us in the long term? If the answer to that is no, then it's like, okay, so do we have any places that we can cut in the short term that won't have significant impacts in the long term? And if the answer is no, then you move on to, okay, so what can we cut that will have the least amount of long term impact?
Yeah.
And so you just keep working through the process. And it's amazing when people as a group evaluate a problem, you come up with a better solution. Now you can't get the group together without with the intention of not listening to what they have to say. You can't get the group together to validate your opinion that you already came into the conversation with a preconceived notion unless you're very transparent about that. Because when they tell you this is what we should do and you say, no, we're going to do this, they will feel like you came into the conversation without the intention of actually
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah. So
It's
true.
one it's one thing to have a conversation when it's over and say, look, I hear us all saying that we think we should do this, but here's my perspective and here's why I'm going to do this other. And I got you all together because I wanted you to first tell me what you thought we should focus on, not to be the fall guy for the decision that we make. And then secondarily, I still feel like this solution is the better one to the two, that we talked about. And so this is what I'm going to do moving forward. But I do want you to know that I came here fully intending to find out the best way to approach this. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I think we need to do this other way instead.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. This is really lovely, especially when you just make reference. Yeah. as a young professional starting out, you just have to do your work. Yeah, do it very well, and build the connection that's been needed. Yeah, and it's really lovely, especially when you make reference to the fact that some persons are opting for staying at home and doing remote job only. But the problem with that is connection does not be built by staying in your comfort zone. Yeah, you have to go out there. You have to kind of engage in the day-to-day business before connection could be built. Yeah, in different layers, and it's really amazing and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for having me, man.
yeah, thank you. Also, Christopher, from all these who would love to reach out to you to connect with you, whether for coaching sections, your advice, or to connect with you on various media, how can they reach out to you and where's the best platform?
Yeah, so all my information is on my website. It's www.swingceo.com, and you can put that in the show notes or whatever. And my contact information is all out there.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. This has really been amazing. I thank you for the whole lot of insight. Yeah, thank you for sharing your leadership insight, your experience across multiple industries. Listener, remember that effective leadership blends strategy, values, and mentorship to create lasting impact. My audience would love to reach out. Check the show notes and you see the link to reach out to him. Once again, it's a pleasure and honor having you on the show, Christopher.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir.